So, a very warm welcome, Darina. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here in Greifensee. Really nice studio. I'm
Thank you.
enjoying it a lot.
Thank you. I'm really happy that other people enjoy it as well. So, this makes me appreciate it even more.
Great. That's always welcome. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what made you actually come here? Let's start with
From the very beginning.
yes.
Yes. So several days ago, you contacted me through my podcast platform because I have this podcast that is called Inside Reading Enlightenment, and it's an early music podcast dedicated to mostly to sight reading, but also I do interviews with musicians, with composers, and with content creators. So you contacted me through this platform, and then I kind of checked through your profile and I saw, wow, what a fantastic profile you have with all these nice videos.
Thank you.
Very professionally done, bravo. And then I think you offered to do some kind of a collaboration. And so that's how it started. And then we had a Zoom meeting where we discussed what should we do and how. And now I'm here to record this interview with you and for your podcast, actually, which is exciting news. There is a new podcast that is let's say, appearing in the field, which is always nice because I think there are not so many people who are doing this kind of content. Yeah, as we talked a bit before, it's kind of a demanding art of media content. So, yeah, welcome to the world of podcasting.
Awesome. No, I'm really, really glad to have you here because obviously you're much more experienced in podcasting than I am. And this is actually how I discovered you, right? Yeah. So I think Instagram suggested me one of your posts. I think it was one with Elam Rotem that you did. And then I was like, oh, I really would like to go and listen to this podcast. And then I went and listened. And I was like, I have to get in touch with you someday. Like I would definitely contact you because I really just enjoyed also, especially like the music examples. I mean, the rest of the podcast is also awesome, but not so many, let's say, other podcasts that I've listened to really have such a focus on a certain kind of music or like a certain kind of interpretative perspective on something.
Yeah, that was another challenge also for our platform as we started together with Sebastian Mitra. Originally, he was my co-host, and now it's a bit expanded. And I have like also another co-host, Dakota Wayne, that is joining for like contemporary music interviews. And we have a tonmeister that helps us sometimes. So that was a challenge to record because initially we started as a sight reading activity podcast, I would say. And we wanted to sight read together, record these sessions, and then like discuss the style, the instrumentation, the artistic approach, the composer's language, so all these kind of things. And that was a challenge for me because I didn't know about like recording, or like I knew something but almost nothing, and it was difficult to combine both ways of recording. As you know, of course, like when it comes to recording a voice and talking, it's not so challenging maybe, and when you have to record an organ or a cembalo or another instrument, you need another type of knowledge, kind of. So yes, and that's how we started. And then I tried to figure out how it would be the best and to combine, and how we would do that. We would play and then talk, or we would talk and then play. So this kind of technical details. And then, of course, sometimes it happens that I am traveling. Like now I was in France on a tour, and then I met Olga Paschenko, a friend of mine, and I was thinking, okay, that would be great to do an interview with her. And of course, we couldn't play together there. And or like, for instance, some people are coming to play concerts in Switzerland, and then I interview them, and we cannot play together. And then I just ask for musical examples, and they say, yes, of course, you can take them download my CD, use, and they give me permissions, and then I use these materials. And the same happened with Elam, because as he said on the podcast, he doesn't believe in the sight reading. He thinks that it's always good to prepare in advance. And it's for him, it comes to respect. It's a matter of respect to the audience, that you should be well prepared. And I really appreciate his point of view. It was refreshing and very interesting for me to think about it, to reflect.
Yeah, for me, it was like a shock. You know, he goes on a sight reading podcast to say sight reading, I don't do that, you know.
Yes.
What are you doing there?
Yes, exactly. And the same with improvisation, what he mentioned. And then he sent me this example that he wanted me to put on the podcast episode. And yes, so that's what I did. And I just insert sometimes musical examples of my guests or their art, or sometimes also there was an episode dedicated to the war in Ukraine when it just started. It was a really important statement for me to do this episode with my friends, Ukrainian musicians, because I have in Basel, I have quite a bit of my friends that are coming from Ukraine, and there is a community, and I feel very well among them. And they are great people. And for me, it was interesting to investigate how they felt after the beginning of the war, how their relationship with music changed over this difficult period. And so they were telling their stories about their families and how they were escaping. And that was a really heavy interview session. And then I asked them what kind of music was the most important for you during these days, or when you started reconnecting with music. And then, for instance, it was not always that they played something, but for instance, a friend of mine, she suggested, for me, it was important, this diminution Susanne und Ruhe, and she kept that in mind, and it was for her like the image of the women in Ukraine, that maybe that was happening to them, that the same story that happened to Suzanne. It's like a biblical story. And so I asked her for permission from an ensemble, and actually her husband played in this recording, and I asked for the permission, and I then inserted this musical excerpt into that podcast. So things like that. But sometimes, of course, I prefer to play with my guests, because I think it's another side where I can get to know the person. And it's really unexpected. It can be unexpected how they react while sight reading, and how they interact with the ensemble partners. And yes, because when we are talking, of course, maybe we try to present ourselves in a certain way. And in music, sometimes it's a different type of interaction, and I enjoy that quite a bit. Yes.
It sounds amazing. Sounds really amazing. So
Thanks.
I definitely also now want to go and listen to that Ukraine episode. Obviously, I had also my own connections with that war, and it shook up so much of this world that, I admire everyone who does their part in working with that material. So thank you also for that. I really have to go check it out.
Thanks. Yeah.
And basically, so like to pull back, what I maybe heard from you talking is you decided, I want to do this podcast, right? And you just went ahead and did it. So you were like learning all on the road.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to do this recording. So let's learn how to do these recordings. Okay, and then we need a different type of recording. Let's look at that. And also like, let's do sight reading. Let's give our best, and then see just what happened and reflect on it. So for me, it sounds, on the one hand, super refreshing, but on the other hand, I think it's probably the reason that you have a very well-functioning podcast. I don't know how many episodes, do you know how many episodes you've done?
Yes, I can say approximately. So we have started the 5th season, and each season has 12 episodes. like 12 months in a year. In a way, I thought, okay, let's do it this way. And so now it was published the 2nd episode of the 5th season. So that many. I don't know.
Amazing. That would be actually the 50th, I think. If it's the 2nd, it should be the 50th.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you
with your
so much.
50th episode.
Little anniversary.
Yeah. It's 50 is a good anniversary. And also, I love the spontaneous. Let me fill out the word.
It's a word.
Spontaneity. Okay. Sometimes I don't find words.
Yes, I understand it very well.
In any case, I just love that how you go on the road and then you meet people and you're like, okay, we should have a talk. Let's record it. Let's do an episode. Just like, let's go and do it.
Yes, I think it can be useful if you bring your little microphone with you somewhere on a trip, and which I sometimes forget and sometimes not. So yes, it happens sometimes when I just bring my little microphone and I record. And then I was talking about that with Andrew Byrne, also who had a podcast, Survival Classical Music. And it was quite a successful one during the COVID times, and now they stopped. And I think he unpublished all the episodes, which is a shame, but I think you can still find them on YouTube, some of them. So, and I talked with him about that challenges that, but there are so many external noises so what should I do about them? Like, I would like to have it clean. And he was like, no, don't worry. Like, it makes it like solid that the person really existed and he came or they came to an interview. So don't worry about that. And so I was like, okay. And sometimes we record something or I record something and there is a terrible noise or a dinner and people are having fun and drinking around. And I kind of enjoy this ambience. Yes,
nice.
That can be interesting. Yeah. But then the interview can sound more relaxed. There is although one interview that is still unpublished. Like, I published this interview, but then I had to unpublish, or like even a couple of them, because my guests were not happy with how it sounded because of this external noises partly. And yeah, they were maybe not happy with what they were saying. I don't know.
Yeah, we're like in the classical music field where so much is stigmatized and there's a lot of pressure on everything being super professional and super well done. Yeah. So maybe some good news. I've been actually researching a lot of what's happening with podcasts and so on. So there's like this free tool by Adobe. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's just called Podcast Enhance. So you can just like take your recording. The free version is, I think, up to 30 minutes. You can just chop it up, like the voice, and you send it to, and it will just work at the voice and also like the noise that's around. And then you get a filtered, processed voice that should be sounding much, much better. It's using artificial intelligence for it. Apparently, I cannot confirm this, but apparently there's even plugins that will analyze your voice. So you can actually just go and type in the corrected sentence that you want someone to say, or if there's like a sound or a crash of something, it will go over the place, and then you can just exchange it, with the corrected version. I'm super excited for all of these tools.
Interesting. I've tried this Isotope. It's not for free at all. But you can also do things like filtering and repairing and canceling noise, dehumming and stuff, denoising. I still believe that the original moment of sound is the best. Like, if you have a good microphone, if you have a good surrounding, a good piece of music that you have recorded, or microphones were placed in a good way. So I think that's the best. Then you don't need to edit and you don't need all these tools. But obviously it's great that we have all these tools that at the end of the day we can have a nicely edited recording that people will listen with pleasure and they will not be disturbed by all these breakages and that happen in the recording.
Yeah. I mean, this is also like something that I particularly enjoyed it because it makes it so lively. It makes it really real. It makes it like I'm in the room with the people and talking, and it's not this super polished artwork that we have configured to the last word. I mean, this is just something else, right? I think both have really their own place and merits, but amazingly, I never thought that, like growing up and being in the classical music world, that I will someday enjoy just casual conversation between two people that I don't even know, but just listening to them and finding it very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned this pressure, and I think it's quite present in our field, especially of classical music. And of course, I think because I'm thinking about this canceled interviews or unpublished interviews that I had to remove. So yes, I think it's a bit of a pity because people then maybe cannot really relax and they cannot trust themselves or trust the audience that they will be accepted the way they are. Yeah, I think, but it's our profession and it's the downsides of it that we have to be always on stage, always performing and be in our best glory. Yes.
Do you think this will change someday?
Hopefully, yes. I think it's changing quite a bit in the contemporary music field among younger generations because from what I see, how composers are rating new generations of composers, you don't always need to play the instrument even, like to perform contemporary music. You can whisper, you can dance, you can clap. It's like depends on how a piece is written, but it's like they try to invent new languages because like this academic way of writing pieces like Stockhausen or Boulez did, it's old-fashioned already, and yeah, they don't call it contemporary music anymore. So yeah, I think it's yeah, and also people show up in concerts. What I noticed, they wear casual clothes, and it doesn't have to be always like high heels, makeup, and especially like for women, it's it's a bit stiff, I would say. But in classical music field, I think it's quite dominant, this way of behavior, like they should behave, musicians should behave. It's a classical music concert. Yeah, I think it's like that.
I've seen both worlds and I'm still undecided up to this day, like which one I do like and prefer, because obviously on one side there is this very high elite of super educated musicians who have practiced their whole life, and there's a certain degree of respect that is brought just by dressing nicely or going to the concert hall and everybody dressed up and everything's super fancy. So that gives it an aura of exclusivity of something that's not everyday life, which I also enjoy very much. But to be honest, I also enjoy like wearing super comfortable clothes. I do this at the organ quite often, especially in summer, because it's so hard on one hand not to start sweating with any kind of clothes. So I just try to dress as lightly as possible.
Yeah.
And then also with the trousers, like they could be super comfortable for the pedaling and so on. And also like for the shoulders, I like to not wear the jacket. And with the organ, it's obviously much easier because I don't have people looking at me when I'm hidden behind the instrument. But in different instances on the stage, it could be quite something different. And I'm still haven't found like the proper language that I can really identify with. I think it's also depending on the context. Like the house concerts that I've been doing, I tried dressing more casually, more, let's call it a shirt that was maybe kind of made in a historical style and stuff like that, where I just try to take it more open, more casual. Also, I really do like suits and I really like to dress up. So
yeah, I don't have a problem with that, with the atmosphere of this high moment of going to a concert, that it's something special for people. Of course, I respect that. And of course, everybody can decide for themselves if they prefer going in a casual clothes or dressing up. Yes, I think it's just there is some kind of a pressure that exists for musicians and for like singers or like special professions. Yeah, mostly like female singers. Maybe I have talked about it with a friend of mine, with Dina Koenig, the one she used to be a singer, actually a really successful one, making her career, and then she just switched and she became a tram driver.
Yeah, I've read about that. I've read about that. There was a hardcore change.
Exactly, it was so abrupt, and partly not because of that, but part of the problem for her, and I feel her point of view, that it was this pressure that as a woman you have to, as a singer, you have to dress up. Your dress should be like very feminine looking, high heels, makeup. So it should be, and I do not really agree with this kind of pressure when it comes to classical music concerts. Yeah, so maybe there should be something reconsidered in this regard, that it's still respectful and people feel a special moment, but it's also more human towards musicians that are, as you mentioned before, we have to play, we have to move. Sometimes the stiff clothes doesn't help us with our expressivity, or like high heels. I don't know, you cannot really breathe in properly, or this tight dresses. I don't know, like maybe you are restricted with your movement and with your expressivity. So things like that.
Yeah. Would you maybe even say that this is the part where we're really losing touch, like with the rest of society? Because I would say from my perspective, these last 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 years, there's been a lot of liberation in society in regards of using formal manner of speech, using formal clothes when going to work. They started doing like, casual Friday, and then it started being casual all the time. And I mean, these are thoughts from my childhood and ideas that were developed at that point. And I think that many people today have already moved past this superficial display of status or certain restrictions that society imposes on us, right? And somehow the classical world, this is my feeling, is still stuck in a very rigid manner of thinking, and they're just like habits that cannot be broken, that are very, very slowly now being opened up and maybe starting to develop. Maybe.
Yes, I think the problem is much deeper, maybe. Yeah, I think the whole concert situation, the whole perspective, as we used to listen concerts, sitting in a concert hall, behaving properly, like everything is kind of set. So the scenery, you go to the concert, you're expecting to see musicians or singers on stage dressed up. And I think this perspective comes from the 19th century, when it was established, after because also I was thinking in terms of early music, that is not historical. To play concerts in a concert hall, like nobody would do that in the 16th century. They would be just reading music as a consort at home, by the table, drinking, eating, enjoying themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Even in the 18th century, like you are walking in the park and there is a group of musicians accompanying you while you're walking, or things like that, or eating.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can tell, like for me, it's super strange to see this kind of music performed in large concert halls. I feel always like this huge disconnect. I can't explain it. I can't put it in words, but I've obviously heard this repertoire played in big concert halls and also very small and intimate, and it's very clear what it's written for.
Yes, I think for me it also creates a cultural clash in a way, and I still did not find the answer how we can work with that situation in the early music field, if we are talking about that. In the classical music field, that's why maybe this field stays more rigid in a way that they are just following this romantic and post-romantic paradigm in a way, and the setting, and they stick to this, like, and also in contemporary music, but maybe in like not in such an intense way, because there are different types. There's like concerts with VR glasses where you can walk and stuff like that. So they do different types of stuff. And I don't really know how this approach can be changed. But I think it's a part of the problem that our field stays kind of in this formal surrounding. And I don't know how we can change that. And also, like, if you have, I mentioned that several times already, like in my podcast, in this movie Tar that was released like maybe half a year ago with Kate Blanchett about exactly these problems and the scene and the behavior patterns that are kind of existent since the middle of the 20th century, and they are still there, and we still face this reality. And it's, yes, you would call it already historical. And I thought that it was also very interesting that they changed that this main character, this conductor, it's a female figure, because I was thinking like, oh, if we would imagine it was a man, and like, I don't know, I don't say anything, nothing offensive, but for instance, if that would be Karajan or somebody else, like a genius, you know, like that we are used to think like he's a genius figure, he's so strong. But if a male figure would behave this way as they show it with this female conductor, that would be absolutely, there wouldn't be any scandal. That would be just like, but that's just his charisma, and like, what's wrong with that? Like,
although
the movie would not
it is a
exist.
little bit changing now. We had the incident a couple of days ago.
Right, with Gardiner. Oh my gosh. I could not believe that, like, nowadays it can happen. And also this, on such a level of our business, I mean, still a business, and the level of his income is incredible, and the level of his education is incredible, and like, he's an aristocrat. And yeah, that's quite a shocking piece of information to confront with, when you see this kind of news. I was shocked. I could not believe. How did you react to that?
I was not shocked, to be honest.
Really?
I was, yes, because I've heard stories before.
Okay.
I've heard stories about many musicians at that level, and especially like the ones who are really at the top. Obviously, you don't know if somebody's throwing shade or if it's really true, but I've seen things happen, and I've heard from people directly tell me what they went through and what they survived. So I'm not really surprised at people just abusing power or behaving in very inappropriate ways. What I am a little bit, not surprised about, but I saw like this whole movement happen in all the other sectors where people started working with the past, where they started seeking what was really the truth, who were the victims from a situation, and they really started to like roll out the past and then see, are we still making some mistakes today, right? The classical music field also a little bit, but honestly, not as much. I think not many big changes have happened in any kind of power structures. It's very, very simple, or still very clear on what you have to do sometimes in order to get to a certain position. I have also been offered a couple of very, let's say, interesting propositions, which I politely have declined. But there's just a very, very weird field that's been, as you say, it's from another era, and it feels like historical. Like my life of today and this past few years has nothing to do with that anymore. But I go to a concert hall, or I see the industry, and I see this historical monument still going on. This is still happening today.
Yes.
So we have this, maybe for the first time in history, actually, this multi-layered society where so much happening. I have also made this experience with social media. I have been a very, very strict enemy of social media for a very long time. And then a few people made me reconsider. I also reconsidered myself, went onto Instagram and just met a whole community of people there over the years that has also been growing and has been extremely helpful, extremely supportive. And I met so many good and interesting people through Instagram.
Yes.
And this is a whole subculture that has nothing to do, again, with the real world, which is a completely other culture, like the concert life for the small artists, for the big artists. And then we have the whole industry, we have the big corporate labels, and this is all somehow intertwining. Then there's this other force, which is the cultural force, the institutions, the academics, all the teachers, and the fundings that they receive. So there's a lot of things pulling in their own direction. And I would say especially for young people who want to become a musician, they only get a very limited view of the whole world. And that's somehow really, really sad if I think about it. There's so many possibilities, and what so many people are offered, and I've talked to many of them, is just this small piece of cake, and they're being told this is everything that you will ever get, and you can try to enjoy it for as long as you can.
Yes, I think, again, it's a part of the bigger problem that also you mentioned institutions and academies, that we are not, as professional musicians, like young generations that are entering conservatories and academies, we are not taught properly about the reality that we're going to face afterwards, after we have graduated from an academy. So we are kind of then left alone in a way in this business, in this cold sea of business, and the market is constantly extending, and some people, they are really confused. They are great musicians, but they don't know what to do with this. How would people know about them? And yeah, you need to be educated in order to deliver this knowledge to other people, that you exist, that you play well. And I think that's one of the problems, that the younger generations, that they are not aware of these challenges, because it doesn't exist at the Scola. This course of how do I deal with my life after doesn't exist, unfortunately, but that's important. And yes, also I was thinking about this monument that you were talking about. This, I totally agree. Also, what is kind of what I observe a lot in concerts and in different fields of music, maybe with contemporary, that I bring always, because I go to many concerts of contemporary music. I'm really interested how it functions, this field, because it's like, it also has its ups and downs. Like sometimes they just commission a piece, and a piece is played once and then never again. And somebody, like, they get money and they get the support, which is also good, but maybe it's not so sustainable. But on the other hand, I feel that the social awareness is much higher, and I feel that this hierarchical attitude, maybe it's less present. Because, like, for instance, recently I've been hanging out a bit in this contemporary music festival, Ruhr Triennale in Duisburg in Germany. That's near Düsseldorf, and in huge, like, industrial places and spaces. It was fantastic to see, actually beautiful. And there was an opera production by Georges Apergis, and I could not see this hierarchical attitude. They were all kind of, I mean, yeah, I've been looking at this production from kind of inside as a visitor, and I was pleasantly surprised. And to that, I have to say that even younger generations of musicians in my field, in early music field, it's like a bubble in a way, and the hierarchy is strongly presented, even though they are younger. And you would say, but they are aware of this kind of things. It's on social media, awareness, like social friendly social behavior and things like that. Being colleagues in an ensemble, I think younger people, they are much more aware of this kind of things, how to interact fruitfully in a group of people. But no, I find more and more that people just like to be in a hierarchical system, because then they feel safe. They don't have to step out of the bubble, kind of, and they...
Really? So that's like one of the reasons is just so they know what to expect, like have this safety of this is how the world works. Let's not change anything.
I think our field is a risky one, because as also we talked with Dina in this interview, she remarked, and I totally agree with her, like, if you ask an uncomfortable question, they immediately find another musician who is available and who is cheaper. And there's always another musician or singer that is available and cheaper. And you are just so easily replaceable as a artistic unit. It's incredible. Of course, people are afraid to ask questions, or like even like this topic that I'm being like really, I'm concentrating a bit now on that, and try to make people aware that in our field it's not cool to ask about the salary. How much are we getting paid? But it's not possible to imagine with a dentist, with a guy who fixes your toilet, They have a rate per hour, and it's insane if they don't know, or like a psychotherapist, like, actually maybe I will pay you, but...
And I think also that's like the conflict of interest, maybe. I have a friend and she collects these stories. Like I told her, you should make a book, because it's the most ridiculous stuff I've ever heard. And it's just happening to her all the time. I'm sure she will be listening and she will have a laugh.
Yes, please bring up this book. We really need that.
So please do the book. Yeah, it would be a great brighter for the day. No, but this was a very big consideration for me, especially these last couple of years, but also throughout my studies. And this is something I've always struggled with. And Corona showed it, obviously, like COVID-19 displayed the meaning of an essential worker. Basically, if my tooth hurts, I need to go to the dentist. I don't have a lot of option. If my toilet's broken, I need to go to the toilet guy, and obviously also therapists and so on. So who really does need musicians? We've been replaced a long time ago. Now everybody else is scared. AI coming along and your jobs will be replaced. I've heard of doctors already, like universities downsizing certain branches like radiology, because AI is just much better than an actual radiologist in discovering what's actually going on in a scan, and much cheaper. So there's already now, AI, ChatGPT came out like 9 months ago, and already there's such huge changes happening. But I think for musicians, that happened when they actually started selling recorded music, when radios came along, when you could just turn on the radio and you didn't have to go to, let's say, the local pub to hear some music, or when you could buy the vinyl of your favorite artists, or just the jukeboxes where you can go ahead and choose the latest single. So this replaced us in a way. It's not still the same energy, obviously, when somebody's playing, but it's much more reliable. You don't have to pay them. They don't come too late. They're dressed properly. I mean, they're not dressed at all, but there's much less room for error. And I've also discovered this in my work as an organist. A lot of people just play pre-recorded music at funerals, for example, because it's much easier. They actually get to choose the song. They don't need to think about anything else. It's just like what they want, and there's no need for a live musician. So that's fine for everyone, from my perspective. But maybe this change, or the world we are living in as artists or as classical musicians, is going now to move over to a lot of other professions who will maybe notice as well that they're not essential workers.
Yeah, I think with the recording issue, when the recording tools appeared, it of course influenced our perception a lot, and how we behave as artists and musicians. I think especially I was mentioning this kind of the middle of the 20th century after the Second World War. And I think that's when all this kind of recording tools, they became unified, and there was like a special, like an orchestra sound was established. It should sound like this, but because the tools, they were not so powerful, so all the musicians, they had to play like super loud with this huge vibrato to match the intonation. And that's how that influenced that process. Recording process influenced the way of playing also, and we are kind of still in this perspective. And yes, that's for sure. And maybe the other thing, that why are we so easily replaceable? Because within the scene, musicians are so scared of those processes that they don't want to ask how much money we will get for this concert, even though they depend on that, maybe, but it's better to be on the safe side and not to ask, and I will do whatever you want, just please, I will be happy. Like that's the point also, that Dina, my colleague, was remarking that you should be happy that you were hired. Otherwise, there are so many people waiting on your place, kind of. So yeah, that's a part of the problem also, that the market is kind of in a way imploding. Yeah, although it's great that there are so many different musicians appearing every year from all these music academies, and they all have unique ideas. They establish their own ensembles, their projects, their concert programs. But unfortunately, it takes so much effort, and as you said, you can just play a CD. But also to produce a CD, in nowadays reality, you know it quite well. You have this fully equipped studio, and you know how much effort it takes, and like financial support and investment. So to record a CD for a freelance musician, it's a lot. It costs a lot, and basically what all the musicians say now, if you record a CD, you do it for yourself.
Exactly.
Basically, not for everybody. Like, maybe you will not even sell your CDs because nobody's interested to buy CDs. They can download, and nobody has sure CD players anymore.
Exactly, I'm sure of it. So we actually did a very interesting project with a friend. We obviously went out and we said we're going to record this album, and this was Celtic folk music. So this is like my side project where I was doing the tin whistles and stuff. So we said, okay, we're going to try to get to funding from sponsors, and we're just going to invest a lot of effort, research this stuff, and do it our own way. So we were lucky enough to have it covered by sponsors. So we went to the studio and we did this recording with a lot of effort, obviously. And then we were so happy that we had this recording and wanted to share it with the world. The reality being that nobody really cares, Nobody, like, my mom is a super fan and she's listened to it like I think 200 times, obviously. and a couple of friends have listened to it as well. But this was, I knew already it will not like blow up or anything, because this is just not how the world works. We have an oversaturation in everything.
Yes.
But I did not expect it to go as badly as it actually did. And we were talking for a long time, and we also decided to actually print a whole bunch of these CDs,
Yes.
not to sell them, but just to give them away
Yes. Yes.
as a gift, because we decided to, since we've already done it, I never wanted to actually print the CD, but so many people then asked, oh, could we have a CD or anything, that I said, you know what, we will invest another 1,000, make a few copies, and then we'll just give it away.
Yeah.
So everyone who wants to have one, please do. But I don't think we would have sold like 3 if
Yeah.
we even tried to sell them in concerts.
Yeah, in a way, it's just a business card that you can give something physical to your followers or concert organizers. And I think that's important to understand for all the like young musicians who want to record a CD, that you should save some money. You should have them aside, like some amount of money, you should have it aside. And then invest it into a CD. But it's not guaranteed that you will cover the costs. No, you just spend it for yourself to have this physical business card, basically, of what you do. That's it. That's the reality.
Would you recommend that to anyone, or would you recommend it like if you were now younger, just starting out with your music studies and wanting to be a professional musician? Would you even recommend thinking about recording a CD?
Definitely, I think it's helpful to have, yeah, it's good to know that the physical CD, not streamed on Spotify, because again, nobody cares and it's difficult to get some listeners. But to have a physical copy, or even like a record, because it's more impressive, but of course more expensive, or maybe just a CD that people are not freaking out and they're not scared, like what is that big thing? Anyways, I would definitely recommend, but you just need to understand that you need to invest a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of organizational qualities, but it will be just for you. It's like a gift to yourself in a way. And actually, I think this year I'm planning to record like 2 CDs, but that's my conscious decision that I will do it for myself, because the people that are involved, I like them very much. The music is kind of new. Another topic is about the repertoire that you want to record, because I've been talking also with some people about that. And of course, if you're recording another flute sonatas of Bach CD, maybe people are just like, but there were so many good, great recordings from all these guys like Mark Antai and Barthold Köken and all these like famous musicians, and nobody wants to listen to another interpretation of that. So that's why people are discovering new repertoire, like Spanish Renaissance music or stuff like that, because of course it kind of inspires you to research this unknown stuff and to discover maybe great music that was forgotten. But the other thing is the market that is like overwhelmed with Bach sonatas, whatever. So you need to look for music that is maybe not so well represented on the market.
But I do love that, actually. This thing that all the great works have already like been recorded, and now let's focus on the stuff that's not so very well known. And usually if we do that, there's so many gems to still be discovered,
right?
Because a lot of this music is not very popular maybe on the first sight reading, right? But then maybe second, third time I get to discover like amazing worlds, or something clicks, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is such great music.
Yeah.
I've been falling in love with like French organ music exactly for this reason. It's in the beginning, I was like, it sounds all the same, and now I'm really finding exceptional pieces of art in there. So definitely. This is.
For me, it's a bit a pity that all these well-known pieces, like Christmas Oratorio, or I don't know, like Johannes Passion, that it's been played so many times, and every year still, like in concerts, everybody's playing that. Every year, all the ensembles and orchestras. For me, it's a bit a pity that the pieces, they get kind of washed out, you know? They're abused by the amount of the performances. because the music is great. It's amazing. It's spectacular. It's the best examples of our musical culture, but for our music culture, I guess. I don't know. But I think, yeah, like I have a mixed feeling about that, because sometimes people just record some kind of unknown repertoire just to be like first in that field, which is maybe also good. Sometimes yes, sometimes not, depending on the music and their reasons to record that. Yeah, but on the other hand, like it's a pity that maybe there is like an exceptional interpretation that is waiting for us, but we will never discover it because a person will never record this CD with this like cantatas with their exceptional way of thinking and interpretation. And yeah, but we will never know about it, so no reason to worry.
Yeah, well, to add up onto that, I think that we are actually living in a time where this could be possible. I think that you were also mentioning like the costs of the studio and everything, that it needs a lot of upkeep, and there's just a lot of costs being involved in every software, hardware, whatever is happening. But that said, I think that the cost is more is actually lower than ever before. So it has been dropping more and more just because technology is cheaper.
Yeah.
There's much more possibilities that can be done with digital recording.
Yeah.
I mean, no one could afford any recording if we weren't able to like digitally record. It's maybe 10 times the cost at least.
Yeah.
So this has been a huge development, and I'm hoping to actually see a big rise of small independent artists. We can also see that like with the big houses, with the big labels, they're really losing a lot of money because of the streaming services. Nobody's selling CDs anymore, and they're losing traction. I mean, we all know how you can record a CD at a big label nowadays, and most people who are actually still, I've been following the new CDs that came out these last couple of years. Most of it is just film music. So most of it is just repurposed from the cinema, like stuff that is actually popular because people just buy that maybe for themselves, maybe for gifts, but this is still something that is being listened to. And let's call it very serious classical music is just reserved for the greatest of the greatest. All the rest is not really marketed, not really maybe even published. And on the other hand, there's so many possibilities for young artists who, let's say, maybe they have a little bit of knowledge in technology, or maybe like you, they just say, I really want to like put out, I have this project and I just want to do it, and then I will be learning as I go along how I can improve my recordings, and then maybe they do a complete recording of a composer that we don't really know, or we don't have good reference recordings for, and this can all be done at home.
Yeah, totally.
Produced with a minimum budget, just a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of love that's going into it, obviously. But I think that's the life of an artist, right?
Yeah.
Nobody told us we're going to be rich
Nobody
or
told us.
have like a stable job, or something that can be very predicted. Actually, everybody warned me before I even started with music, or they told me not to do it at all and to reconsider. And I still did it, and I'm really happy that I did it. That said, I know many artists, and I don't know one artist who's not complaining.
Yeah.
So maybe there is also something else to be said about the whole thing, because saying that being an artist is one of the most beautiful professions in the world, as I feel, and at the same time complaining a lot often because of how things are, of the status of the
insecurity is also
everything. is somehow maybe clouding the whole experience. And I really, really, really admire people who are just really above that, and live in a very different kind of world again. That's not being darkened by any of the problems us normal people have.
Yes, I think everybody has problems, even if people maybe they show a different mood or a different side of their profession. I think everybody struggles more or less from maybe the same problems. I'm not talking about this high-end artist like Gardner, but even him.
Apparently.
Was obviously having a bad time with and he was, because of course when you're being not nice to your colleagues, it does mean you're happy. You're not doing it out of happiness. You have your struggles and sorrows. That's why you are being so harsh to the people that are surrounding you. And I think, everybody experiences that more or less. I think for me, it's sometimes a difficult paradox that our profession forces us to be as individual as possible, to kind of encourage us to develop our individuality, our charisma, personality. But on the other hand, being in a group or like functioning in an ensemble, because like maybe recently I was having this ensemble activities and I kind of observed a lot of this group dynamics that makes it kind of not easy to deal with, as I mentioned before, because people sometimes are feeling unsafe and insecure, and they just want some kind of a hierarchical system just to follow because then they will feel safe. And on the other hand, this conflict of being individual and bright as you are kind of doesn't go along with that. So it's a difficult dilemma also musicians are dealing with. They want to be safe, but they want to be individual and artistically independent, and that's a difficult task for us.
Yeah, it's I can relate somewhat to exactly this topic because it's been going on through my mind lately, and this is the topic of connection and relationships between people, because I'm not even sure that we have ever learned a healthy way of creating relationships. And I'm not talking just like personal relationships or romantic relationships. I'm talking also professional. I'm talking like in an ensemble.
Yes.
And I'm talking exactly about this dynamic between how much of me is in the whole.
Yeah.
And when am I overstepping boundaries and maybe even becoming destructive, or when am I
being
shutting
suppressed.
myself down and just letting others shine, and doing this to a detriment to myself and the group because I could contribute more. It's really such a fine line.
Yes,
to walk.
I totally agree. Yes, I was having now a thought while you were talking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I can recollect this. Yes, what was that? Yes, the relationship, personal relationships. That's also an interesting topic because usually music for us, it's more than a profession. We live like as a freelance musician, we live from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to sleep. We are constantly like thinking about something, programming, inventing a new instrumentation, thinking of music, listening to music, talking with colleagues, going to play a concert, playing a gay before, and stuff like that. And I think it's much more than being just a professional musician. It's not a profession. It's like your lifestyle, basically. And that's why in the group, in an ensemble, it's a lot of this, I think, going mixed, the professional relationship as like being colleagues, and like personal relationship meant being friends. And I think it's a lot, sometimes for me it's difficult to combine, because like in any case that would be maybe kind of overstepped in a way, because like somehow you should separate in a way, but I think not everybody's up for that. Oh, but we are friends, like, and how do you function in an ensemble? Or like, oh, but I thought we were friends. And then it's like, actually people get disappointed and stuff. And I think it's a very sensitive dynamic. And for me personally, I'm still thinking how can I be socially, like, let's say, clean or clear and not toxic to my colleagues and friends. At the same time, how could we combine this kind of relationships? Because like we are on a tour and we play the whole day, we rehearse, and then we have a concert, and like everybody wants to be just together with everybody. It's like going to have a beer every meal together. And I don't know if that's necessary, because you're anyway spending so much time together. And yes, I think, and that creates like some kind of a like pressure and tension for me personally, because I also feel that I should follow. Otherwise, like the vibe is a bit, you're not following, you know, it's, I don't know how to explain. It's really sensitive, yeah.
Don't you get like extremely tired from all of this?
Yes, that can be exhausting, yeah, because it's like 24/7 basically, and I don't know personally how to deal with that you just feel comfortable professionally, and you know how to express yourself properly, and you can also express yourself in this friendly relationship. For me, it's unclear, and sometimes I mix up things that I feel that it's a friendly relationship. No, but actually it is only a professional relationship. But it's being shown as a friendly relationship. So sometimes for me it's difficult to navigate, and it's not really clear. Yeah.
I agree on that. I've had not all, but some experiences of performing with friends have been really disappointing. And I've tried to analyze also in retrospect what happened. And I think one of the big problems is with friends that we actually like them and we have a lot of understanding of what their situation is, what their problems are. On the other hand, when making music, everybody wants to do like their best. And if maybe this friendship comes into conflict where it's suddenly okay, acceptable to be late for rehearsal, or it's acceptable to not be as prepared because, I've been having a rough time recently.
Yeah.
Then it's really mixed up and it's really hard. Do I draw a boundary like as a friend or as a professional?
Yeah.
And it's been really hard,
Yes.
to be honest.
Yes.
It's
Totally. Yeah.
it's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah, but also there was something else I wanted to add. Oh, Sunday. always hard to survive after a Gottesdienst. Yeah. Yes, so about discussing openly this kind of subjects with your friends and colleagues. I was also faced with the challenge that not everybody likes to discuss that openly, and nobody, like not nobody, but like not everybody wants to face that there is a problem existing and that maybe somebody's feeling not so comfortable. Like it's expected that you are always feeling happy, that you are in this ensemble, you were hired, you're playing music, everything is so great. So, but this pink perspective, like this ecstatic feeling is always kind of welcome, and it's the vibe that should be always going on. And for me, sometimes it's also a bit challenging to see that like there is a certain expectation, and you cannot say like honestly, you know, like I enjoy playing with you and you're a great musician and the music and repertoire is great, but I have a difficulty with this, that, and that. How can we go on and solve it? It's always kind of what I experienced. It's a bit like, no, we don't really discuss difficulties, and if something is not okay, like next.
Yeah.
There is always somebody else out there.
Yeah. And I mean, there's this huge theme with the ego that's involved in these things, because also obviously with friends it's different, and with friends you have this other kind of communication. But with musicians and artists in general, sometimes you don't even know which part of them you're talking to, right? Maybe it's a conscious artistic decision, and then they would get insulted because you don't agree with their perspective. And sometimes it's just, let's call it a lapse of memory, or something that's not properly aware until the last point, or something that's just not working out. And you could say it, bring it into their awareness, and they will be like, oh, yeah, of course, I've been doing it like that all the time. And then it's fine. But usually there's this really fine line with the ego that can turn very sour very quickly.
Yeah, for me, it was an interesting experiment when I started my therapy. And I discovered that, well, actually, you can talk openly about your feelings, and you can come with your discomfort to people, to your friends or to your colleagues, and you can just discuss some kind of tension that you have. And maybe it will be fruitful for everybody at the end. And then when I try to do, like, most of the time when I'm trying to do that, it has a positive effect, and I feel happy with these intentions, and I think it releases a lot of tension between colleagues, especially, like, I don't know, like, I'm sorry, I need to just turn off this. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I had this moment with like a friend of mine, and then I started noticing, like, we would go somewhere and I would introduce this friend to my friends, and then I would notice afterwards that there was a dynamic happening, that then they collaborate together, but this friend of mine never would tell me that they are collaborating. And for me, it was, I just talked about it openly, and I said, well, actually, this friend of mine that you asked to help or to collaborate, they told me that you asked them, but it would be also nice to hear from you that, actually I asked your friend to help me with that and that, or like we decided to collaborate. And then it was totally understandable for this friend, and the tension was solved, kind of.
I'm guessing it wasn't even intentional. They just didn't think about it, right?
Yes, they just didn't think about it. No, there was no, like, bad will behind that. Of course not. And yeah.
Excuse me, just I wanted to add on to that. So often, also it played out in my mind. Like I had troubles expressing myself as well, especially like in these situations. And then I would just like spin these stories in my mind and just create circles around how they didn't invite me, or how they think my playing is not adequate enough, or like this huge monster stories.
Exactly.
And then they grow, right, over time. And then suddenly I would find myself to be against everyone. So I had to prove myself constantly.
Yeah, that can be a challenge. Yeah, and that's the most interesting thing, that it's not even the truth. Because the reasons can be whatever. They forgot, they didn't have you in mind, that's why they didn't ask you for that concert. They, I don't know, there was another person around that, like, their side stopped on, like, kind of can be a different reason, and it's not your fault, or because you are a bad musician, or like, no, it doesn't work like that. And the other experience that I had when I tried to express myself, but I think it was already afterwards, I was having some kind of tension going on, but then still I tried to come with this tension to the dialogue partner, and then it didn't work at all, because I felt the communication was not working at all. And like, I expressed myself, but then on the other hand, as a response, I got totally different, like, it was a different talk actually. And then, like, somehow I was just kicked out of the group, but without discussing and without answering to my questions.
Wow.
So this kind of dynamic happened, and that can also happen. But then that means maybe that people don't really have motivation to go on with this relationship, and that's life, that happens.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really sound like a relationship. That sounds like a really one-sided, very one-sided deal. Like, there's no space for you in there in any way.
sometimes it can happen, but I think with this experience, I realized that I grew a lot and I learned about myself a lot, because I learned that maybe this dynamic is not my preferable way of collaboration and communication as for an artist and musician. And under these conditions, it's not, I cannot express my musicality also freely in an ensemble, and yeah, my voice becomes kind of thin and not so present anymore. So it's exactly what you were mentioning before, like, am I expressing myself, or I'm just trying to go along and just contribute into ensemble, just something, you know, but you don't really know if it's a really artistically valuable input.
Yeah. No, I love that we touched on mental health. I mean, this is a huge thing that I love to talk about, which we probably will. I just wanted to like add on to something before that you said about all these relationships and how it changed. And I'm really curious because obviously you started in Basel.
Yes.
And you started in 2016, right?
Yes.
So there was a different time back in 2016. And I know from a lot of people who went to Basel that they, for example, have not been using any kind of electronic or digital media. Like I know a lot of them that would still walk with their historical Nokias at that time already, which was historical performance practice in a way.
Exactly, yeah.
So how was like did the communication also there change over time? Like how did they touch on the whole digital subject? Because for me it's very interesting to see from outside how that developed.
Yes, so exactly, it was my impression from the people of the Scola Cantorum. I think it's a very valuable space for researching music and for researching historical ways, manuscripts, notation, historical approach. It's a very valuable space. But on the other hand, it's a bubble. And every bubble has its own ups and downs and pros and cons. And I think newer generations, especially now coming after Corona, because Corona kind of brought up a lot of awareness of that, and a lot of people started doing live streams, and there were some kind of mini competitions during the Corona times where a student would record their performance, or they would do something like a special video project and they would be awarded by the institution for that. And also now at the Hochschule für Musik, they established a lot of video courses together with HEC, with this electronical museum in Basel, where they kind of do like visual courses. So you can actually study that now at the Music Academy. And I think some students from the Scola, they also take part in those courses, because it's kind of group lessons, so you can take part. And I think they become aware of that. And also because of collaborations happen between like Sonic Space Basel, this contemporary music, not an institute, but it's a department, and with the classical department, with the Scola. So at the Theater Basel, they do some kind of collaborations, performances, theater performances. So I think it's always good to go out of bubble and to see what's happening out there and how people deal with this reality, how people deal with technology, with social media. Like also, that's why I'm here. I'm super curious to see how you deal with this podcast, how you're going to proceed with that. And like, I'm very curious that there is a person who is so dedicated to social media, like you, for instance, because it's not given that a person will be so burning for that, you know, and well, in our field. And I think, yeah, that's curiosity. I think it's one of the most important tools, that we just get curious and not like, oh, I'm just going to research that and anything else doesn't touch me at all. Yeah, there can be also downside of the archaeological research of the early music field in general, that some people, they just really go into this archaeology part, and they, as we were talking, for instance, on this interview with Andrew Byrne for his podcast, that sometimes it's like, okay, you are impressed by the research outcome, but it's absolutely impossible to listen to the performance of this person who researched something, so greatly, but then it's impossible to listen to that concert. Or so these things happen. And I think maybe, I hope for the like future generations, or now younger generations, it's easier to go out of this bubble, to step out and to find friends among other musicians, architects, poets, whatever fields they like and they're attracted to, and to to collaborate on their level, maybe on a friendly or professional level. I think it's always good to not be blocked within your bubble. I would recommend that.
Yes. I mean, obviously, being in a bubble is also very safe, and I actually do love being in a bubble, even if it maybe doesn't seem so from outside. But there's a lot of dangers of not being in the bubble, because in this case, there's some kind of always this energy coming from outside, and there's always like this new project or this new thing that you could learn about. So it's a lot of information just bombarding us. And I think especially in today's society, it's so important to be very conscious with your bubble. So I'm really happy with my bubble. And I'm really happy that I'm living inside of it and with it. But also, I think, as you've mentioned, it's super important to just consciously decide to go out of it and find out what's going on out there. So you can also bring it back, or maybe create another bubble, or maybe do whatever you want. This has been my struggle with like older generations. I've been chatting recently with a composer also from the academy, and I was completely irritated by the lack of knowledge outside of the academical area, like how the actual world looks like. And we touched on that before, what you said about young people who go into this academic world have actually no idea, and they're not prepared for the real world and what's happening out there. So this has become somewhat of a personal mission for me. This has become something, and this is why I also created this podcast, because I just realized that there's a whole there's a huge cliff, and just like a river, canyon, whatever you want to call it, in between what the academy is doing and the academic world, and what's actually real life situation. And if we are going to be mean about it and talk in this world about it, I also think that academies will be somewhat substituted in the next 50 or 100 years. We will not be seeing the same amount of universities. They will not have the same amount of power, not because of quality or anything, but just because it's so much easier to transfer knowledge with other media than going to an institution and sitting through a course where one person will present that course, and this one person has to also present 3 different courses that they are not an expert in, and you don't get the full information. So I'm a big fan of really deep research and really specialized knowledge by an expert, and also maybe even different experts who sometimes contradict each other. And so you get to have this discussion, which I really love. And universities, depending on their level and on their scale, do not necessarily provide this service. As obviously I've talked to many teachers there over the years, and also not to throw much shade, but again, these are artists that actually have at some point stopped playing and decided that they will earn their money with teaching, but then again are teaching other people on how to play. So if we're going to be really, really, really mean, let's call it a pyramid scheme. Okay, so we're teaching people to do something so they can teach other people to do that, so they can teach other people to do that. And I don't know how sustainable it will be. I mean, it's not just the music field, it's everywhere like this. But in some way, I have very high hopes for what it is to come. And I would really love to start this movement or somehow create a bridge between this traditional worldview and like what modern things can happen and what this world can bring. I'm amazed at the lack of online research that is accessible to musicians. There's so much just locked in libraries where you have no access to. And I mean, why? Why?
Well, I cannot answer this question, but I had the same impression. If you Google something, like it's really all on the surface and you really need to research, you need to go to libraries. But I think it's not only with music like that, also with arts. If you want to research something about a painting, or like how can I find a traverso flute on a painting of the 16th century and which paintings, like it's not the full information will be found on the internet. That's for sure. You need to go to a museum, you need to go to Prado and take a picture of that traverso corner. Anyways, but just as an example. Relating to this problem with institutions, I think institutions should change. They just should reconsider their approach. And I think that's what I see that is happening in Basel. In terms of, as I mentioned, this sonic space, I see a lot of changes in this department because, for instance, for the final concerts of like composers or they created a festival that is called Ataka. I've been going to the concerts of this festival where it's not a master performance. It's not a master concert, like a recital, you know. It's a bunch of recitals and you are playing throughout the festival. That's how you play your master recital, basically. And for the final concert, they did like one ensemble was of the actual students that just graduated and played their master festival, let's say, and also the alumni ensemble of the people that graduated 2 or 1 or 3 years ago. So people get in touch with each other, they become aware of each other. Before, there was a different system. They would just ask an ensemble that is well known in Basel that would always perform that. So there was not really an exchange between younger generations. And I see it as a positive outcome because, yeah, immediately people are aware, oh, there is a contemporary flute player and you are also playing. And so we kind of see each other. And when I need a substitution, I call you because I've seen you in that concert. So I think it's extremely fruitful. And the other possibility is that this collaboration between institutions, as I mentioned, at the Theater Basel, because they, for instance, have this theme, like subjects like apocalyptic subject that they did, or like different topics where students of all the like departments, they can choose and they can collaborate. There can be electronic music and a lute player and a medieval singer with like visuals and programmed lights or whatever. Yeah. And that can be quite cool. And also, yeah, I see that, as I mentioned before, the hierarchy is not maybe, of course it's present, it's an institution, there should be a frame, but maybe the attitude, what I felt, like talking to these people, it's on this level of friendly support and just being yourself and expressing yourself. Also, like I did this interview with Roberto recently. He also studied in this contemporary music department and he's an extremely active person for starting projects, festivals, collaboration, and he wrote his thesis about collaborative practices, and where you can actually go online and read all these 10 statements of collaborative practice. So I think this open-mindedness, I enjoy that quite a lot, to see that. And I have this hope, as I see this example, I have the hope that maybe institutions, they also reconsider and they will open up more towards our reality, younger generations, and their demands and wishes. That's my hope.
Well, basically, yeah. I mean, it is something that I would say musicians have been struggling for a long time, not just in the situation that we are today, but like the situation where why don't people come to my concerts, and why don't people, I don't know, buy the CD or whatever. A lot of musicians and artists will say, well, I don't care. It's art. I do art. I care about the art. If people don't like it, it's their problem. Which is a very strong stance to take. And obviously, yes, if I create something for myself, I want it to really work for myself and not for everybody else. And we can also see it with, I think Bach is one of the best examples, that it was a completely misunderstood composer in his time that created amazing work that nobody really appreciated around him. There were a few people that knew what Bach was doing, but I think most of them, they just didn't really care for the amount of genius that went into all of that. And today, of course, we have a different perspective on it, but let's say from our time, if we want to have some kind of connection with people, maybe we should also care about the people. Not in a way where we all now do film music, so they buy our CDs, but just like in some way create things that are relatable, make programs that are somewhat relatable, or accompany them with stories, or accompany them with more information, or something that is not just like the traditional concert form that we're all used to, but that goes a little bit out of its way just to accommodate and appreciate the audience that is actually there.
Yeah, with Bach, I feel kind of that it was both. Like maybe he was underappreciated, but on the other hand, he was exactly at his place, and he was creating music for certain occasions. So he was really writing, like, for the next Sunday, I'm going to write another cantata. So it was like his work was very situational and applicable for the certain church, certain occasions, certain people. And I think in this case, it was a happy coincidence, because he was totally like, he was creating and it was performed, and there was like not Charles Ives, this American composer of the beginning of the 20th century, where he was just working in a bank and he was writing just for himself in a way, and then storing his manuscripts in a drawer of his table. And then afterwards it was discovered, like it happened to so many musicians. With Bach, he was kind of lucky in this regard, that everything was performed and he was really creating for people and for the community where he lived and worked. It's also a greatest privilege. And of course, I think that discovering a genius that was living together with you in the same time frame, I think maybe it can be not always obvious, because it can be seen retrospectively, because as we know, Mendelssohn, he rediscovered Bach and he brought his music on stage only in the 19th century, when it was kind of forgotten. And I think, yeah, to discover a genius or rediscover a genius, I think maybe takes some time to realize that his heritage or their heritage, they survive through the years and they are still meaningful for all the generations that are living, they were living afterwards. Because like still now, Bach's music is relevant for our time, or I don't know, Beethoven, relevant. And I think this kind of relevancy is important. And what was the other question? I don't know anymore.
I just meant, with Bach, that he in some way felt underappreciated. He still had to teach Latin to those kids, not like Charles Ives working in a bank, but he still had to do non-musical things, and everybody cared about Telemann. Nobody really said Bach is like the thing I want to go listen to.
Yeah, right. But as I mentioned before, like there are so many talented musicians that nobody knows about because they don't know how to post on Instagram or promote themselves,
Exactly. And I think this is like the field of marketing, which has been frowned upon by every kind of artist. Like only hearing the word marketing is just like,
yes, something complicated and unpleasant.
Because it's like these sleazy people do marketing, right? Yes. They go cool. And I mean, if you need marketing, you can play, right? You need someone to put your music out there. So I've been reading a book and I really loved it because this guy said in the book he was meeting a journalist for. To have an interview, and she was this very fine young lady, and she was meeting him to discuss his new bestseller. So she said she admired him for writing such a best-selling book, and went on with the compliments, and then he gave her the compliment of, you have such a great writing style, you're very elaborate, very eloquent, just really great. And she said, yes, I hope to someday become a best-selling author myself. And he was like, well, great. May I do a suggestion then? Learn sales, learn how to, do that. And she reacted in a very, very negative way, basically saying like, I'm above that. I studied writing. I know how to write. And he said, I don't know how to write. I only know how to say what I've written, and it's not as good as you would have written it, but I know how to say it, or how to sell it. Yeah, and basically, she just stormed off, being insulted that a salesman would be more proficient than her, and adding on to that, I have also discovered several times in my life that I have maybe applied for a place to be or work with people who have been chosen over me in this position, who, in my opinion, were not even close as proficient in this regard, but somehow they were able to sell themselves. So this was something that I really noticed, okay, this is a skill. This is something that I'm lacking. And this is something that needs to be developed if I don't want to be this frustrated artist that's always, just not happy with how things are.
Yeah. So maybe we round up. What do you think?
I have no idea. What time do we have?
It's 3:11.
3:11. Oh my God. It's been long.
Like
right?
1.5 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for I was sitting here and then I was like I'm super thirsty. I have this hot head.
Yeah, me too.
And it would be great, but I wasn't, I didn't want to break the flow,
Yeah.
because we had
it was good. We touched a lot of important subjects.
Yeah. And it was great with you, by the way. You were just like rolling and
No, but it was also great for me, I think, to talk about this difficult issues that I'm facing in my life, and I'm sure a lot of people do. It's not only talking about something, it's about personal things, but on the other hand, I think a lot of people and musicians, they understand what it is about because by themselves maybe they are experiencing or they have experienced such things, and maybe it will help to somebody to realize or reconsider some things. And I'm very thankful to you for this option for this possibility to come and just basically talk and ventilate a little bit about the problems that are.
Thank you, actually, because this is really what I want to do. And this is also something like in my personal development, which I feel is the next step, and something that I really, really, really want to do. And just ask people about what do you care about? Like what's the things that need to change for you to like become happier or become like more successful in what you do? Like what are the issues with our field that we're dealing with? And obviously I have my own perspective on it, and I have been working in my way with the social media, with everything that I put a lot of energy and effort in it, because it was at some point I chose that I want to share early music with people who could appreciate it, because if I didn't, something would be missing. Like if I wouldn't go onto social media and do that, then social media would not have early music on keyboard instruments. And back in the day, there was like Instagram was really empty. Almost nobody did it. It was very small accounts. So I really decided to do this systematically and just build up something, because it was my vision at the time. And now this vision has also shifted a little bit, because a couple years later, I've noticed I'm part of this community, and many in this community are still struggling. I do not have all the answers. I have some help that I can give, but I would really love to like create this huge collaborative thing that is also happening in this podcast, and just listen to other people, what they bring to the table, what their solutions are, what ideas they have, and to really just share it with as many people as we can, so we can help them. And I've actually also decided to do like a course to compile all of this small knowledge and make it really specialized for classical musicians who want to succeed in this. So normally, or I'd say like the instinct, if somebody wants to do something like that, would be, okay, I know what's the solution, so let's just go sell that to people.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I
Yeah.
actually want to really ask people, what are the issues
Yeah.
that you are facing, and just like create genuine relationships, because I really believe that our industry is suffering so much because we don't relate. We have a real issue creating relationships with each other, and I really want to change that.
Yeah.
And I really started now trying to reach out to as many people as I can, and just create this this bond that we're in it together, and that we can actually make a change.
That's a great initiative. I'm really curious and looking forward to seeing what's gonna come out of this very powerful and nice statement. And yes,
Thank you.
Great. Thanks
Thank you.
for this talk.
It's been great having you here. I would love to talk to you again someday when we just scratch the surface of
Yes.
mental health, which I'm
Sure.
sure we'll do some other time.
Yes,
So
I'm happy to do that.
thank you so much, Darina,
Thank you.
for being
Thank
here.
you, Leonard. It was a pleasure. Have a nice
Likewise.
day.
You too,
Bye.
and see you next time.
See you.